So it didn't look exactly like this on an org chart, but if we're just to simplify things, this woman is like my boss's 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 boss, right? And thankfully, in this season of making a lot of decisions, she had kind of played the role of partially mentor, partially guide, but also just someone that I really trusted to tell me the truth in so many ways. And she's someone that carried a lot of influence in the organization that I was at, which was Ramsey Solutions, Dave Ramsey's company. And I'll never forget, there was this one particular meeting where the thing that was most at the forefront of my mind at the time was, man, I love this organization. I love where I work. I love what I get to do. And I also love the trajectory that I'm on. And I mean, that place is just amazing, right? And there were so many opportunities there. And at the same time, I was like, man, I'm feeling this like hankering, this hungering, this urge of like, I think if I don't actually step out to start my own thing, and if I don't become an entrepreneur, I could spend my entire life wondering what if I would have done that. And that was this weird catch-22, because I could also drop the scenario where I did leave and I was like, I could spend my entire life saying, what if I would have stayed, right? What could have happened if I would have stayed? So that in itself was a source of tension. And I kind of brought that to this meeting. But then in the process of bringing that to the meeting, she did a really good job of listening. And I probably did a really good job of venting. And she asked some really, really good questions. And that kind of exposed two other things, is like, I don't know where I want to live. The place that I currently live doesn't feel like home, but I don't know what does feel like home. And I know that I do want home, but I don't know what home actually is essentially the equivalent of what I babbled through. And then add to that, number 3 is I'm not married and I don't know if I want to be married. And so I don't know what to pursue in that arena, which is theoretically the most important relationship of your life, right? And so I'm kind of just working through all 3 of these things. And to her credit, she kept her composure and she listened all the way up to the point where I ran out of steam. And man, I really think the Holy Spirit worked in her in this moment, because she didn't overtalk. She held her composure. And more than anything, she just told the truth, because she looked me dead in the eye. And all she said in response to all of that was, wow, you've got a lot to figure out. and Ben, I'm not kidding. Like I vividly remember in that moment, like tears welling up in my eyes. And she just, I mean, it was like someone took like a pin and hit the nerve, like right on. And it was all the stress, the overwhelm, the anxiety that I had been experiencing. She named it. And I took on this identity as like, man, I'm someone that has a lot to figure out. Now, we could do, honestly, and hopefully we will, in this new format, do episodes on talking about like the great leadership that was displayed in that moment by her, because she didn't try to be my superhero. She just named what was going on. But in many ways, it was that tumultuous season that ultimately I look back to and I say, like, eventually led to the business that we now get to be a part of.
Cool. So what were some of those like fears and anxieties that you had?
Well, we named one, right? The what ifs. What if I leave and it doesn't work out and I spend my entire life wondering, what if I would have stayed at this amazing organization called Ramsey? Or what if I stay and then I spend my entire life working in this career, in this job, and saying, what if I would have had the guts and the courage to start my own thing? That was number 1. And then number 2 would be, what is home? I don't know what home feels like anymore. I don't know where home is. Is it possible for someone like me to have a home? Which now I look back and I say, that's such a ridiculously absurd question.
As we sit in your home.
Yeah, exactly. Praise God, right? That very much feels like home, but that's the growth that's occurred, right? But it felt weird to even bring that up as a topic. And then it honestly, I would have said then, like, the primary overarching question was, do I want to get married? And certainly that was in there, but it was more like, is it possible for someone like me to get married? Like, that was like the question that I was really wrestling with. And I, let's just go deep, like right off the bat, like my overarching core emotion that I dive into hardcore is shame, right? And so And the story that I was telling myself is that someone like me can't lead a business, someone like me can't have a home, and someone like me can't be married and have kids. And I mean, all three of these things were colliding in this single 6-month span that, I mean, it was a very, very, very turbulent season for me.
In reality, though, I mean, you were choosing between two pretty great what ifs, regardless of the direction that you choose to go. It's almost easier to choose between the lesser of two evils than it is to choose between two, possibly really great paths.
Yeah. So my previous role at Ramsey, I would facilitate masterminds for sometimes, 6 to 12 CEOs would be on a call. And a lot of these people were wildly successful, right? And sometimes the problems that people would bring to the call would be things like, I don't know if I should stay CEO of my $20 million company or if I should appoint this highly qualified leader to be CEO in the next year. Or I don't know if I should buy my second home in Jackson Hole or if I should buy it on the beach, right? Or I don't know, there were just always we don't know if we want to have this beautiful family of 3 kids or if we want to have 4 kids, right? And as a single guy, right, that was just learning how to make money and how to manage my hassles, I would look at these people, I'd be like, oh, boo-hoo, that must be really rough. But what I now have more empathy for is it is really hard to distinguish what the wise thing to do is whenever you're faced with 2 good options.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing if it's should I work at Ramsey and follow the career path here, or do I want to take up robbing Walmarts for a living, right? It's that. I wasn't even asking those questions because that's good versus bad. And many people, not everyone, right? But many people in some ways get to a spot where they are faced with less decisions that are good versus bad, and they are required to make more decisions that are good versus best. And it's in the good versus best that we become incredibly indecisive. And what's wild is indecisive actually ends up being a form of bad, I think.
So how did you come to the decision? How did you decide between 2 good things? Was there a framework or something that you learned, something you followed?
Yeah, it didn't feel like a framework at the time, and that's we live in the age of the framework right now, right? Yeah. And I'm it's gotten to the point where I'm skeptical anytime anyone tells me they've got a framework for that, because I'm okay, my experience is it never feels like a framework when you're in it, but then you look back on it and you say, oh, there was stuff going on at that time. So I would say there were a bunch of variables that collided that helped me make the initial decision that then cascaded into a multitude of decisions, which now I look at the sum of the decisions that I made in that season and I say, oh my gosh, that's now my life, right? But if we were to point at maybe a primary variable, I'll never forget, I had been a facilitator of an on-stage session at an event we hosted for EntreLeadership. This was at Ramsey with Brian and Shannon Miles, which you want to talk about full circle. We are having Brian and Shannon, who have been some of my greatest mentors in business and leadership and life for that matter. We're having them at our experience coming up in Austin in October, which is just, man, it's such a joy when people that you love and have learned from so much, when you get to introduce them to other people that you love so much. I am just so excited about that. But Brian and Shannon, wildly successful 10 times over, but they're also the thing that I think I respect about them the most is they're the most wildly successful, some of the most wildly successful people I've ever met. And they're some of the most down to earth, nonchalant, just so humble and kind and gracious, and you would never know it. And I honestly didn't know it. So we did this on-stage session for the business that they owned at the time. They've since sold their shares in the business, Belay, right? And I think it's public knowledge. They sold a percentage of their company in 10 years for $126 million.
Wow.
Holy cow, entrepreneurial, just geniuses in so many ways. I didn't know this at the time. So I did the session with them. We really connected. And it was after that session that I sent an email to Brian and I said, hey, Brian, I really enjoyed getting to meet y'all. And I'm wrestling with a lot of questions about entrepreneurship or about staying here at Ramsey and following the career path here. And this is a little bit of a weird request, but could I drive down to Atlanta and just buy you lunch or a cup of coffee and just ask you a bunch of questions for an hour? And I'm thinking like, I don't know if this guy's going to think this is weird. I don't know if he's even going to reply to me. I don't know what's going to happen out of this. And he emailed back like within the hour and he said, Alex, that's ridiculous. You're not going to come down for a coffee. Why don't you come stay at our house for the weekend and you can spend time with our family and we can make sure we carve out time to talk to.
Wow.
Dude. And that's the people that they are right now. Don't everyone go email Brian and Shannon right now. Right. That was just, it's a testament to their desire to pour into just people in general, but especially young people. And there was so much that I got out of that weekend, but there was one particular night that I was kind of talking to them through the decisions and all of the great things associated with staying at Ramsey and all of the potential benefits of going and being an entrepreneur and why I might want to do that. And I'll never forget, he said, like, Alex, do you think that there's anything inherently right or wrong with one of these paths? And I said, no. And he said, okay, well, that's helpful to know because you've been using a lot of the mental framework of like, one of these is right and one of these is wrong. He said, it's actually probably helpful to know, like, there are probably moral ways to do both of these things, or there's immoral ways to do both of these things. But the language of one right path that God is calling you to and one wrong path that God is calling you to is probably not actually in your best interest because it's probably not actually true. And then he said, like, could there be wisdom in both of these ways? And we spent some time talking about wisdom and why each way could be wise and stuff like that. And it became clear that there could be wisdom in both ways. Like it wasn't necessarily clear that like one way was unwise and one way was wise. And then he said, okay, Alex, I've got one final question for you. And he said, what do you want to do? And then he said the phrase that has haunted me ever since in the best possible way. He said, you need to get it through your head that God delights when you do things that bring you pleasure that result in other people getting served. And I did not leave that weekend with a decision made, but I did leave that weekend with that phrase. And I think up until that point, that was the sticking point. I felt wrong answering the question, what do I want to do, up until that point.
People have a multitude of reasons as to why they would struggle to start a business or make a decision. Do you think that's something that people often fall into then, is like thinking there is a right or wrong decision when really you're just deciding between two best options?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. And the reason why I know that is because we've now shared some of this content and like, I could probably make a list of the top 10 things that have resonated most with people in like a visceral, trajectory changing kind of way. And what we're talking about right now is for sure one of them, right? And we should give credit where it's due. This concept was not original to Brian. Brian was referencing a book called Decision Making in the Will of God that was written by Gary Friesen. And the good thing about Dr. Gary Friesen is he references a book called The Bible whenever he's writing Decision Making in the Will of God. So we need to remember there's nothing new under the sun. But that book, particularly on decision making, is so empowering because it gives people agency. I think a lot of times we live in this world right now where we use the word calling very liberally and we don't actually understand what we're talking about in some ways. And I think a lot of times, like, people will face a big decision, right? Like, where am I called to live? We have options now that we didn't have before. This was me, right? And it's like, am I called to live in Dallas, or am I called to live in Phoenix, or am I called to live in Alaska? And what's crazy is if you're a positive person like I am, like, you can go visit Dallas, Phoenix, and Alaska and make a list of reasons of why it would be great to live there, right? There, so you can like list positive things about anywhere. So then you're asking, well, where am I called to be? And we get this idea in our head that, man, God's will is for me to be in one of those places. And if I don't choose right, then I'm going to deviate God's will. And to which I have now learned, dude, you are on the ride of pride. Like, calm down. It's okay. You are not going to deviate God's will for the universe and certainly God's will for your life by just deciding where to live. And I think the thing that I often have to recognize and remember is it's oftentimes not the way that you go, it's the way that you go. And we often use moral terms, right, wrong, good, bad, to describe immoral decisions. And I think what my eyes were opened up to and what that book really shared is a framework and an idea for, hey, there are situations where moral terms do apply. And God has specifically commanded us to live with a particular morality. Within that, there's wisdom, and we should pay attention to God's wisdom. So it's not going to say that you should live in Dallas in the Bible, but it might have things to say about your relationships and your finances and your commitments that if Dallas was to deviate those things, you probably shouldn't do it. But that within that, what Gary Friesen highlights is you've got an insane amount of freedom and responsibility to make decisions.
Some people from Texas might think that it is in the Bible that you should live in Texas.
I keep, I'm from Texas. I keep looking in the index for the word Texas and I can't find it.
Yeah, not in there.
I just think the index
maybe
is
it's
properly
in Greek
organized
or something.
That's got to be what it is. That has to be what it is. That's pretty good.
So how did you make the decision to leave Ramsey and start your own business then? What was that process like?
Praise God for them. Like, they did not put me in a position where I had to make that decision in isolation. I was able to share it with leaders like the one I shared about at the beginning of this conversation. Suzanne was her name, but also shared it with Dave himself, along with some leaders that I worked really closely with at the time, that I was wrestling with it. And man, it's one of the things that I both benefited from, but now I feel really compelled to extend to others, is I was blessed by them being willing to sit in the tension with me to help me make a decision that I felt integrity in, because they did not put their hand on the scale too much either way, right? They just said, like, we want to help you make a decision that you can be fully behind and that you can be excited about and that you can feel is wise for you and your future and for the way that you feel called to serve people. And so we had a bunch of intense conversations at Ramsey, but then beyond that, had a lot of prayer and discussion, had a lot of conversations with mentors. I'll never forget, there was one particular conversation that I had with a mentor of mine, Mike Valentin, and he kind of ran me through the ringer of wisdom, I would say. Like, he got past the morality thing pretty quickly and was like, yeah, like, both of these could be moral. Like, there's nothing inherently wrong with entrepreneur or working at Ramsey. And so we got over that pretty quick. And then he ran through wisdom. Like, what would your plan be? What would your business model be? What are your desires for your future? And can you accomplish that being an entrepreneur, right? What would you be giving up? And would you be willing to live with that? And then he asked me just a unbelievable question. He said, this thing that you want to accomplish if you do step out to be an entrepreneur, because he could see I was leaning in that way. He said, if you want to accomplish it, he said, would you be willing for it to take twice as long as what you think it's going to take, and for you to make half as much as what you think you're going to make? And it was helpful in that moment that I said, yes, absolutely. And I didn't even blink. And he said, okay. He said, you have my blessing. I think you should do it. And so there were many conversations and a lot of prayer to define what I really wanted. But ultimately, I really did realize, like, I had this heartbeat and this calling for this mission that became Path for Growth. That's what we eventually called it. That wasn't going to go away. And any time that I spent beyond where I was not doing this thing, I actually think it would have gotten to a point where it would have been a disservice to the place where I currently was. So that's what's interesting, is like, it might not be inherently a immoral decision, but there is an immoral way to make a moral decision. So and I can say this, there have been people that have done this where they say, I know I'm going to leave, but I'm going to build my brand under this umbrella for 2 years, use the resources and money of this place, half-heartedly be here, build this secretly on the side, and then when it benefits me, I'm going to leave. And I just made the decision, like, I'm not going to do that. And praise God, like, I think that's one of the reasons why things have gone so well.
What were those first days like stepping out on your own? I mean, yeah, describe the process to me.
Oh gosh. I mean, let's start with something super practical, is like deciding a name, right? Like, what is this company going to be? One of the great pieces of advice that Brian Miles kind of dripped into my brain early on was like, you got to decide, are you going to build a job or are you going to build a business? Because it's two radically different strategies. And if you're building a business, that's going to be an asset that you own. And it's not good to build an asset called Alex Judd Coaching Company, right? And so I knew, like, I don't want this thing to be built around my face, both from a business perspective, but then one of the things he told me, he's just such a pragmatist. That's what I love about Brian. And he said, him and Shannon actually both shared this quote. They said, ego is dilutive to net worth, which is basically like the idea that, like, you want to see your net worth shrink, inflate your ego. You want to see your net worth grow, slim down your ego, because your ego absolutely gets in the way. And so that was another compelling reason not to call it Alex Judd and make it all about me. And praise God, like, we've continued to go along that path. Like, there's people that are actively engaging with our company that, quite frankly, I think they don't know who I am. And I see that and I'm like, praise God for that. That is such a good thing for everyone, right? So then you come to what are we going to name this thing? And that can actually be a little bit of a hard decision. I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but I had already submitted my 2-week notice at Ramsey, or I can't remember how long I stayed on for. It might have been a little bit longer for that, but I had submitted my notice. We were in an exit plan and all of that. This was also another caveat to this, is smack dab in the middle of red hot COVID season. So this is May, June 2020. Wow. So we are in the middle of things, right? And so I'd submitted my notice, and it was at the time that I submitted my notice that I felt, okay, I feel like I can be operating in integrity, that in my free time now, whenever I'm not at work, I can start building this thing, right? Not reaching out to customers or anything like that, but I can start building this thing. And so I had some pretty intense late night whiteboard sessions on my own in my basement apartment at that time. But it was in that time that I was kind of kicking the tires on names and things like that. And I ended up buying the LLC Path for Growth. I saw that it was open. I saw that the domain was open, and I claimed it. I wasn't like hyper passionate about that right off the bat. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, that's it, right? Which I always kind of envision, like, when you get it, you're going to get it. That wasn't my experience, right? I was like, that could be an option. It's cool that the domain's open, pathforgrowth.com, and I'll just buy that right now. And we may use it, we may not. I own a lot of domains that I never end up using.
That happens.
Yeah. I own a salsa company domain that I still am committed to using one day. But yeah, there's a lot that I haven't used. So this, I thought, could be in that pile, right? Meanwhile, one of the things that I'm doing at Ramsey is, during COVID, we launched these basically virtual consulting sessions that I was leading, that basically I would sit down with the business owners for a full day, or with their leadership team for a full day. And it was one of those that I was on. This was like a very spur of the moment, like COVID type thing that we spun up. And it was one of the first ones that I was on, that I had kind of created the template of how I wanted to operate. And I really went into that saying, like, hey, this is my final weeks here. We hadn't let the customers know yet that I was leaving. And so I just said, like, I'm going to apply myself to this with excellence. I'm going to do my best. We're going to crush this. And so I went into that session with this group of customers. I'll never forget, the husband and wife were both named Cody. It's pretty awesome, right? They both shared the same name. And they were just incredibly passionate leaders. I think they had another leader on the Zoom call with them. And we started by just clarifying objectives. And I just kind of said, what would winning look like by the end of this day? We were going to spend 6 hours together. What would winning look like by the end of this day? And they kind of said, well, we need to figure out where we're actually going. Like, we have no idea where we're taking this thing. We've seen success, but we don't know where we're going. I said, okay, got that damn vision for where we're going. They said, we also there's actually a lot of disagreement about like where we're at right now and how we're actually doing. We have a lot of lack of financial clarity. We have dissension and disagreement within the team about like how we should be using our resources and what we should be prioritizing. And I said, okay, so like where we're at today, where we're going, where we're at today is kind of the headings that I put it under. And then I said, okay, what else? And they said, we need to leave here with like clear actions, clear next steps. I said, we can do that. So where we're going, where we're at today, clear actions. We do the whole session. I think it goes really well. They seem to be really enthused. It was a lot of hard work, but walk them through a process of doing those things. And so it's at that time that at the end of the 6 hours, I kind of say, okay, now I want to talk to all of you honestly. This is one of the first of these sessions we've done. Let's look back at our objectives from the beginning. Did we accomplish this? And did you get what you needed? And I'll never forget, it was the woman, Cody, that I kind of went over the objectives with her. And I said, how do you feel? Do you think we hit them? And do you feel like you got what you came to get out of this consulting session? And she said, if we were to sum up, she's like, if we were to sum up what we basically just did here, like we definitely did all that, but what we really needed was just a path for growth. And I was like, it's going to be weird if I start crying right now, but I want to start crying right now.
Because you had already bought the domain.
I had already bought the domain.
That's incredible.
I haven't told you this story.
No.
Yeah. And so I was like, it just felt like a little bit like God winking at me.
Some affirmation,
through this woman named Cody saying like, you're on the right track. And so that's where we sealed the deal on the name.
Wow.
And I'm not leaving it now. I'm sticking with it. So I don't even remember what your question was, but
I was just asking about like those first few days, months, like what was that like? What was that step like? When did what were you thinking before you made the decision? And then what was it like actually taking your first action to start the company?
Yeah, I mean, thrilling, right? Like just confirmation is what I would say. Like it just felt like, oh, this is what I've been like so hungering for. And like I had theories about my answer to that question, what do you want to do? But this is now confirmation of like, this is what I wanted to do. And part of that was, I mean, had a really incredible exit few weeks with Ramsey. Like they were abundance minded enough to celebrate me on my way out. Like I still remain friends with those people, and that is not a given. And so I am so grateful to them. I will never stop being grateful to them because I felt like I left on a wave of momentum, not this like huge weight that I now had to overcome, feeling guilty for making a decision about my career.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But, and then beyond that, I mean, I remember having conversations with, Olivia, who's now on our team. She wasn't at the time, but also her husband, Will. I was having dinner at their house every Wednesday night and just kind of thinking through like, I'm going to launch this thing and I don't know how it's going to go because I'm not going to talk to customers beforehand because that doesn't feel right. And I can't guarantee any customers. So I could always pick up a job at a coffee shop or something like that while I'm building this thing if I need to, and kind of was operating like that, was also operating as though someone told me like, you're probably not going to go on vacation for 2 to 3 years. So that's like my mindset going into this. And then I put out an Instagram post saying the website will be live in a week and a half. But if you would like to just hear more about what we're doing, one of the things that we're going to be offering is one-on-one coaching. And you can submit an application, and I just put a link to a Google Doc. And I think we got 50 requests for one-on-one coaching like that first post.
Wow.
And it's like, well, there goes the coffee shop idea, right? Like I was full. And I filled up my one-on-one coaching roster within the first week of the business.
That's incredible.
Praise God, right? Yeah. Like so grateful. And there were so many things. There are actually a bunch of things that looking back now, I might actually do differently in those early weeks, but also praise God, there was enough grace that like we came, we said we were going to do a thing. We did a thing. One more story about that was just like thrilling. First 2 weeks, I get a call from a friend of mine named Robert. He's still very connected to our community, business owner up in Alaska. And he said, man, I heard you're starting your own business. This is awesome. Tell me about it. And I was like, Path for Growth, shared with him like our real goal is to help people get clarity of vision, define where they are, take consistent action. Our mission is to help impact-driven leaders step into who they were created to be so that others benefit and God is glorified. One of the benefits that I had at that time is like, if anyone said, tell me about what you're building, it was just like, you just opened a fire hose of passion, right?
Yep.
And so I was just so excited, just bubbling over. And so I just kind of literally, I didn't even think about it. Stream of consciousness said, hey man, like I know we've talked about like me coming up to Alaska sometime. That's always been on my bucket list. Like it's been a dream of mine. Maybe one day I could come up and do a team training for you and we could also explore Alaska some. Maybe like over the course of the next couple of years, we could do that. And he was like, well, what about next month? And I was like, is this what it's like to own a business? And sure enough, I went to Alaska and I stayed in Alaska for like, I mean, the first year was 10 days in Alaska. The second year I figured things out and I was there for like 20 days or something like that. I did our team training and then stayed in their guest room. And so it was honestly one of the things that I had to learn early is like, oh, there's no rules. Like I kept looking for people to tell me I couldn't do things. Like you can't stay in someone's guest room if you're also delivering a team training. And then I do it and be like, oh my gosh, not only did no one get mad at me, like that was actually awesome and we should do more of that. So that was one of the things I learned early.
Well, and I mean, one of the things we talk about, and it's one of our core values, right? Freedom and responsibility. That's you learning that firsthand at the very beginning probably set us up for success there.
Yeah. And you know, I am still learning that. I actually think it's one of the things that's really hard is there's a difference between having freedom and experiencing freedom. And the amount of freedom that we experience, what I've learned, is directly correlated to the amount of responsibility that we're willing to take. And so, I mean, let's just use the example we already gave. It's like you're going to go to Alaska for 14 days. You're going to stay in their guest room, right? Are you willing to be responsible for the costs and the benefits? Not just talking financial. In fact, not really talking financial at all. The costs and the benefits of that decision. And one of the things that I realized is like, yeah, I'm willing to take responsibility for that. And if you look at it through that lens of like, man, I'm willing to take responsibility for the upside and the consequences of good decisions and bad decisions, the amount of freedom that you feel is so cool.
Yeah.
I think people often have no clue. And I think this really applies to business owners. All the things that you can absolutely do today if you want to, right? And that God would even delight in it. But we're all scared about what will people think or what are people expecting me or what are the quote unquote rules. It's crazy how much freedom you have if you're willing to take responsibility for it.
So you made the decision to leave. You started the business. Like sounds like pretty quickly it became successful, right? Like you weren't working two jobs. You brought Olivia, our coaching manager, on pretty early, right? When was that? Like, what was that decision like? Walk me through that.
So 2 crucial hires happened in the first 2 weeks, which did not expect that at all, right? I mean, literally, I had written in notebooks, there's a high likelihood that I might be doing this by myself for 2 to 3 years. And here we are 2 weeks in. Honestly, it's one of the pieces of advice that I give entrepreneurs nowadays is like, we spend so much time planning and mapping out worst case scenario, which I think might be wise, especially in the case of starting a business. But do you spend any time mapping out best case scenario? And I was actually radically unprepared for how well and how fast it was going to go. I had shored up the downside real well, and I wasn't prepared for everything that happened in under 2 weeks in some ways. And so had to learn on the job. So made the decision to hire an assistant through a company called Belay, which Brian and Shannon were part owners of at that time. And her name was Lane, and she was my first assistant. And that was a fractional capacity. And then 2 weeks in, we're at this, I'm in Galveston with my family. My parents had gotten a beach house down there and they had planned this like a year before. And so I'm on the beach with my family and I'm just like having a ball working while we're there on the beach and just thinking that's the coolest thing. And like, just like literally posting on Instagram every single day that I'm thrilled to not be in a cubicle today, all of this stuff. Right. And, kind of like on a walk with my mom, I'm like kind of saying like, man, it's awesome that things in the one-on-one capacity have gone so well. But one of the things that I was really excited about doing with this new business was this thing called growth groups. And I just don't think I'm going to have time And she kind of helps me arrive to the conclusion of like, well, Alex, like when you start a business, like, and things are going well, so you have more than you could handle, isn't that the time when you're supposed to like hire someone maybe? I'm like, oh gosh, I'm supposed to be this guy. Why am I getting this advice from my mom right now? But that's how fast it moved, right? Like, I think honestly at that time, I would have been able to give that advice to someone else, but I wasn't able to see my situation through that lens. And again, it was agency. It was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. And so I called Brian Miles, and like talked him through where we were at and like what I was thinking about doing. And he gave me advice on hire them as a contractor and make sure you clearly document expectations and all of that. And then I was just thinking about it. It's like, well, if I was to hire someone, this is a really important thing in our company, growth groups. And the way we do coaching really matters to me personally, because although my name is not on the business, the way we advise people feels like an extension of my beliefs and values in some ways. And thankfully, the types of conversations we have with people, we get to collide with people in their highest highs and their lowest lows. And especially in those lowest of lows conversations, I wanted to make sure if anyone's going to be advising people on my behalf or our behalf, I want to make sure that it's someone that I really trust. And so truly, if you would have asked me at that time, who's the one person that you could see and trust doing that, it would be Olivia. And she's someone that I worked with at Ramsey previously. She left before I did to start her own business, ran a floral events company. They would do flowers for weddings and things like that. And you can imagine what that was like during COVID, right?
Oh, gosh.
She ran an events business. Yeah. So that, I mean, we should have that conversation with her because her and her husband both displayed some amazing leadership in that time. But I just really trusted her. And whenever we worked at Ramsey together, we just both kind of had this, like, I didn't have to say a word. I could look across the room at her in the middle of a meeting and just be like, no, we're on the same wavelength, right? We just like had that kind of vibe. And I called her and I said, I mean, honestly, it's not dissimilar from the conversation I had with you, Ben, just a handful of months ago now. I said, Olivia, this is like a level 2 out of 10 conversation, which apparently that's how I start a lot of conversations these days. And I said, like, this might be a crazy idea, but here's what I'm thinking. I want to do this thing called growth groups. I think you would crush running it. I think you could really serve leaders. And this is the format that I'm thinking about. And here's all the reasons why I think you'd be great at it. It wasn't exactly her interviewing for the job. It was more me being like selling her on the job in some ways. And here's what I think we could structure like and all of that. And I'm like, I want to give you plenty of time to think about it. Take all the time you need. And she's like, well, my initial answer is yes. And I was like, okay. And she's like, but I've learned in conversations with you and I talking about ideas, it's always good for me to talk to Will first. I said,
Wise.
okay, you take time, talk to Will. Will was all aboard. And so Olivia became our first active coach on the team. And she led growth groups for years, honestly, and then eventually became our coaching manager.
Wow. So you talk about coaching being kind of an extension of your core beliefs, your values, and how you approach that. What does it look like to repeat that or pass that on to someone else in a way that ensures like a quality of standard and repeated excellence?
Yeah. Well, that is the question that took us probably 1.5 to 2 years to figure out, right? We're on year 5 now. But Olivia and I mean, so the benefit that Olivia and I had is, like I already shared with you, we could look across the room and just be thinking the same thing. And we're similarly wired enough to where there were so many things that I didn't have to train her on, right? There was so much shared experience, shared background, shared understanding, shared beliefs, shared values, that it was such a blessing just to have someone that just got it, right? But then there were other things that were my particular way of doing coaching that she hadn't done before, that my method at the time was literally like, I would watch a recording of hers and then I would come to her and say, I've got 57 pieces of feedback that we're going to walk through together. And I thought that was me being a quote unquote good leader, right? And what we learned over time is that that's not leading, that's reacting. And I mean, we could talk about it. The way we learned this is through bumps and bruises. But what we eventually got to is we're going to have a coaching playbook that runs everyone through the simplified fundamental beliefs, values, techniques, strategy associated with Path for Growth coaching. And regardless of how much we can see eye to eye across a room, everyone that becomes a coach at Path for Growth, including myself, is going to endure that training, get put through that training so that we have consistency of outcome on the back end. And that's where we're at now. And now, I mean, I just look at it and I mean, honestly, I can tell you this, it's their full-time job. I actually think our coaches in so many ways are better at the one-on-one gig than I am. And it's because they are so relentlessly focused on that playbook and maximizing it in service of their customers. It's just so cool to see.
What were some of the unexpected challenges as the business began to scale and you brought on other coaches and employees? Like, was there anything you didn't anticipate? Were there things that maybe you did anticipate but were more challenging than you expected? Walk me through that.
If we're going to continue on the point that we're already talking about, like, I didn't realize just how many expectations I had in my head and how difficult those expectations would be for good people if I didn't take time to specify what they were and document them. So it's now one of the things. It's always capable of becoming a weakness. I actually think it's a strength for our team now, though, and it's the reason why we've developed tools like success statements, which everyone in our program is familiarized with, trained on. Right. It's someone recently told me the most single valuable thing Path for Growth has done for their business is we taught them how to leverage success statements to bring intentionality and clarity to their team, which it's like, wow, praise God for that. Right. That tool came out of a need that we had as a business to be really clear about what we were expecting. So I didn't know how hard that was going to be. I didn't realize how bad at that I was going to be. And learn that by stubbing my toe in so many ways.
What do you mean by stubbing your toe?
You should ask Kelly Krieger that question, is what I would say, which I don't know if you know the name Kelly Krieger. Thankfully, Kelly's her friend, and Kelly's a leader that I deeply respect. And Kelly is not stubbing her toe. Kelly, and I don't think we did it all wrong. We told Kelly whenever we hired her as our first one-on-one coach, like I explained to her, like, you are kind of our guinea pig doing this. And like, if you're down and excited about being a guinea pig, I think you'll crush this, right? And like, but you got to recognize, like, anyone that runs to the front line of the battle is going to have the most things shot at them, right? And Kelly, to her credit, she's a brilliant leader. She's incredibly creative. She takes extreme initiative. She's got a great ownership mentality. And we needed all of those things. And basically, my training playbook was just watch recordings of me doing coaching calls and knock yourself out. We'll give you clients. She had owned a business before, built a business, all of that. And I just figured, all of these things that I've learned about coaching and working with leaders over the past 6 to 7 years now at this point, like, people will just be able to absorb through osmosis. And that was the extent of her training. And I mean, within 30 days even, we had her on calls and taking one-on-one clients and all of that. And it's actually not the reason why she left. I mean, the reason why she left is one of our clients with her actually offered her a job, which is like, holy cow. I mean, in some ways that's a compliment. Yeah. I'm thrilled for her that she wanted to do that. And in other ways, like, wow, didn't think about that one, right? So that's a stub toe in some ways, but like, I'm thrilled for her and she's crushing it now. But I would say the biggest thing, like stubbing the toe, is like, there were so many things that I could have said proactively. Right? There are so many things that I could have trained ahead of time that we now do, that like, it was basically just feedback and reaction. And feedback in some ways is evidence of non-proactive leadership, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think that feedback is bad, and you will always have to give feedback, but way better for all of us to take 10 minutes ahead of time to say, what am I expecting and what do I actually want? Let me put that on paper so that I'm at least showing these people what winning looks like to me before they even try it, if that makes sense. Mm. We didn't do that, and that's what I mean by stub toe.
Mm. What was like the biggest challenge over the last maybe just couple years, now that the company's been going for 5 or so years, that you had to navigate?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'll never forget watching Dave at it was a summit conversation or something like that, and someone just asked him the question. This is Dave Ramsey, right? someone asked him the question. He's got 1,000 team members at this time, right? Like wildly successful in so many ways, $250 million company, all of that. And someone asked him the question, like, over the journey, over the process, like, what has surprised you the most? And he said, I think I had this idea in my head that the people I started with would be the people that I ended with. And you just heard this tone in his voice that it was like actually still gut wrenching. And I can honestly say, like, running my business over the course of the past 5 years, I think for a period of time, I was like, that must have been really hard for Dave. That was a reality of running a business that applied to Dave. And gosh, I mean, now, like, through a wide variety of circumstances, there were people that, like, when you hire people, it's not like I never hire people expecting that person's going to be gone in a year, right? I never do that, right? And we never do that, right? I kind of expect, like, they're going to be in it for the long haul and we're in it with them. And you never expect that someone's going to get another job offer and leave. Or, like Zach on our team, he was my right-hand man for a really long time. And he's still just a dear friend. He's someone that I respect so much, look up to so much. I've learned so much from him. He was our COO for a large period of time. And he went to start his own business. And gosh, I mean, that was hard. That was really hard for me. I had tears in my eyes in more meetings than I ever would like to, right? But now, I mean, I can look back at that now and say, like, I'm honestly genuinely thrilled for him. He's crushing it right now with Lean Dirt and everything that he's doing there. And I can honestly also say, like, our team is doing so well right now. We're thriving and flourishing. And so the standard that I've learned to hold myself to is to remember, like, no one is indispensable. And that applies to me. Ego is dilutive to net worth. So, right, I better keep my ego down and never think that I'm indispensable to this business, because that will crush any semblance of freedom that you have running a business. But then also, man, I have just learned that I so diminish God's capabilities if I deem one person or one role on our team indispensable. And even if I never say it, if I treat anyone on our team as indispensable, that will crush them. That is not good for them to be indispensable.
Yeah.
And so, but it's gut wrenching when you realize the people you start with are not the people that you're going to end with.
Yeah. You mentioned your exit from Dave Ramsey, and I feel like it'd be a cool conversation just diving into, like, what does it look like to exit well, both from a leadership perspective and from, like, if you are the one exiting, what does that look like? Yeah.
I mean, you want to do this now, or you want to take it out back?
We don't have time. We don't have time for that.
I do. I mean, and let's talk about expectations, right? Just for a moment, like, we all have expectations about how people will leave when they inevitably leave, right? But so often that's the one thing we never talk about, because it's almost like maybe they're not thinking about it, but if I mention it, they might then think about it. It's like, dude, like, everyone all the time is operating in a free job market, like, and everyone all the time has the opportunity to leave. And if you've got expectations in your head about what it would look like to leave well, you should share those. But then the associated part with that is, like, you are then held accountable to those. And man, I have worked for organizations that you could have done everything. You could have moved heaven and earth to try and leave well, and you left. So they were going to be bitter, resentful, and I mean, nasty towards you. And that's just not the leader that anyone, including the leaders of that organization, wants to be. It's really easy to drift into that, though.
So you mentioned the team right now. Like, it feels like we're at a really healthy space, both as a company, as a team. In the last couple of minutes, just talk about where we're headed. I mean, this podcast, hopefully, if it airs on video, I did my job right, and all the cameras were running, and we have things going. If not, working in public. So we'll do the next one. But yeah, just share maybe a little insight on where you see things going, maybe some of the things you're placing some emphasis on, or new endeavors you're embracing.
Yeah. Don't say you're embracing, say we're embracing.
You're right.
Ben.
Sorry.
You got this. It's okay. We're still 90 days in. You're good. That's hilarious. I'm so excited. I think I was sharing this with you the other day. Is like, there are parts of what we're doing right now that feel like day one again. And they feel like day one because of, it feels like the scrappiness and hunger and adventure and passion and new and fresh. It's all come surging back in so many ways. But with that, also the challenge, the decisions. And now, like, we've built this thing, praise God, it's running so well. We've got multiple team members, but it's like, there are like commas in the decisions that we're making now. It's like, we're not talking about, oh, should I spend $50 on this software or not? We're spending like thousands of dollars on investment into the future. And what's so cool is God, I think, has given me and us vision for like a future that we deem worth investing in. Like that I do not think this is where the story of Path for Growth ends. I actually think year 5 is where the story of Path for Growth in terms of the next iteration starts. Like we have the team right now to just do things that I couldn't have dreamed of 5 years ago. And so, if I was to write the story of the first 5 years, it was in our vision charter. We were operationalizing. We were getting good at our core competencies. And in some ways, we were learning who we were. And one of the things that we tell people is that, man, when you do what you have to do, you get to do what you want to do. And so now what we're focused on is we've got a way of measuring impact on leaders that we're saying we want to impact 1,000 leaders by January of 2028. And we're deeming impact as like, not just like, oh, they flipped a page in a workbook somewhere. It's like, no, there's legitimately, they engaged with us in a way that they opted in for and spent meaningful time with us where we had the opportunity to collide with their life and change their trajectory. That's how we're thinking about impact. We want to do that for 1,000 people. Right now, we're ahead of schedule. Praise God. Like, that's awesome. And then what does that give us the ability to do? Creative adventure. Like, we're saying, what would it look like for us to engage with this mission of helping impact-driven leaders step into who they were created to be so that others benefit and God is glorified in a manner that looks like play. Like, I want people to look at what we're doing and say, oh my gosh, they're just having so much fun, like serving people and working together, helping business owners grow their business and grow themselves in a healthy way. Like, one of the foundational verses of this business for me personally has been Matthew 5:16, which is in the same way, let your light shine before men that they may see your good deeds. And that when they see your good deeds, when they see your personal growth, when they listen to your podcast, when they see your leadership, when they see the way your team and your business is growing, like they certainly don't say, yay, Alex. They don't say, yay, you. They don't say, yay, Path for Growth. Like that when they see all of those good deeds, they can't help but look towards heaven and say, yay, God, right? That people may see your good deeds and glorify the Father in heaven. Like, we need a standing podcast because I can't sit down for this. Like, it's just, and then I get passionate about that. It's one thing for a founder to be foaming at the mouth passionate, right? Like, hopefully that's a given. Yeah. I would say that should be a given. What's so cool is, we just got to spend a week on the lake in Tennessee with our team members and their spouses. And the team right now is as good as it's ever been. Like, it just feels like we've locked arms. It feels like values are, just locked in, aligned. Feels like beliefs, feels like passions up there. And it's such a gift that we can go to any single one of our team members, Bert, Olivia, Matt, Kyle, Michelle, Ben, myself, right? We can go to any single one of them and ask, how are you growing right now? And they have an answer like that. Right. That is the type of team that I dreamed about having in service of other people. And man, we've got it right now. And so, yeah, now we just got to keep the momentum going is what I feel like.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm stoked just to be a part of it. And yeah, it's just been cool to be with Path for Growth with you over the last couple months. And I'm excited about where things are going to go. So.
We should cast vision for what we're doing right now too, is like one of those strategic investments that we're making is the podcast has been so good for us, right? Like it's been, the audio podcast in particular has been such an awesome platform for us to be able to connect with leaders. And you have come in the past 90 days and just pushed, like, your content is too good for poor production value. which in many ways is both a compliment and an insult at the same time, right? Which is a gift of yours, Ben. And beyond that, like, man, the way the world is going, people are connecting on YouTube and connecting with video in ways that they're not in the audio platform. And so, like, I'm just so excited about the investments that we've made into this space, the way we've prayed over this space, and also the plans, both in terms of content, but also interviews that we have that we're going to record from this space to serve people.
This is great. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Ben. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. If you want more content like this, we've got some killer stuff planned. So make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.